Welcome to a new edition of the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino. On this episode, we talk with coach, consultant, business success, and the sword guy, Glenn Beechy. He went from leaving home at 17 years old, growing up Amish, and carrying a heart full of anger and revenge, to learning how to forgive and live a life of freedom in every area of his existence. From being $1 million in debt to now being financially and mentally free, this year, he is celebrating his 25th year in the construction business, and he wrote his first book while being married for 26 years. We cover the whole journey and a little bit more. Enjoy this interview. Let's hop in, Glenn. Thank you again for taking a minute out. And I want to begin our journey with, looking at the calendar now with March 12th. 6 years ago, this pandemic started and changed the world, did so much to all of us. How did you get through that era? And how has it changed the way that you live and work today?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, that's a great question because I had a really super rough time during 2021. Um, shortly after the pandemic started. I was obviously, like I said, I've had my construction company now for 26 years, owned my small business construction company, half a dozen employees. Currently I have 4 employees on payroll, but and then my wife helps me a lot in my business also. So during the pandemic, I got really sick and I thought I was going to die, and I had surrendered to the fact that I was going to die, and because I was on oxygen, it was super, super tough times without being sick. It was super tough in the business for me because I had to go back to some of my customers and raise prices on bids, contracts that were already signed prior to the pandemic hitting. And then the materials just kept going, and, because I do a lot of roofing, remodel, residential construction. And it was extremely, to say the least, it was so hard for me to get through that time. Like I said, I had literally surrendered to the fact that I'm not going to come out of this alive. But I got through it. I still have some after effects as we speak here today from being sick from that, because it exposed some other things in my body that I didn't know that I had pre-existing. But I'm doing okay now. I'm doing okay. Some days I'm doing great, but uh, I'm still working through some of the things that, like I said, that exposed in my health, my mental, physical health. Uh, I As far as business goes, now I'm doing really good in business. Like, we're doing super good in business, like just amazing, really. In the construction business, because we're super booked up. We got big contracts already for this year. Just 2 months in, actually, in 2.5 months in, we have big contracts already for the year in construction. So life is good in the most areas. I still struggle a little bit with some health issues, but kind of got to take it in stride, because I'm a determined dude. I mean, with the things that I've been through in my life, I don't give up easily.
Absolutely. Well, you've already kind of touched on exactly what you do for your profession, but if you were to get in front of a bunch of 13-year-olds at career day in a school and you had to explain what you do on a daily basis, how would you do that?
How would I do that? You know, one thing that I would first off encourage a 13-year-old, because that's about the age that I quit going to school. Okay. I have an eighth grade education. Um, and that really brings up something else that I'll touch on a little bit here is, be careful how I say this, but just transparently, I despise college. And the reason I despise it, I'll unpack this a little bit, is because not that we don't need it. We need college, okay? We do. But it is so overrated. It is extremely overrated. And this is my own opinion, experience, et cetera, et cetera. And I can back up what I'm saying here. Not saying that we don't need doctors and engineers and specialized knowledge, because we do, but we don't need it to the effect of what I say. You end up with a mortgage payment and no home. And what I mean by that is you have a 200 or $300,000 in in school college debt, but no job when you get out of college. So what are you going to do? How are you going to pay back that debt? It's so overrated. So what I would encourage a 13-year-old to do is get into trade. Go through high school if you want to. If you want to go through high school, that's fine. But get out of school when you turn 18 and get off your butt, go to work, learn something that you can do physically with your hands and be productive and uh, be a producer in society. And what I mean by that is do something in trade like a building, because there's such a major shortage right now in the U.S. anyway. There's a major shortage in the U.S. of people that want to work hard with their hands and feel productive at the end of the day, because you can stand back and look at this building that you built, or this plumbing job that you did. You ran water lines in the house, etc. Electrician. That's another big shortage, and I think that if we were to do a better job in marketing this to the next generation, that working hard with your hands and feeling accomplished at the end of the day, instead of sitting at a desk and maybe, you know, here's the deal: we can't all have a desk job. We all want the cushy jobs, and that's somebody's still got to put roofs on and build houses. And
For sure.
it's for me, I love it. I love being in construction because you get outside, you get some sunshine, you feel accomplished at the end of the day what you built, and I could talk on and on about this because there's such a major shortage, in trades now, because nobody wants to. It seems like people they don't want to work. They want to go get a $250,000 college degree, but when they get out of college, they may not have a job.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. What did you want to be when you were a kid? Did you have a dream job?
No, not really. One thing that I did dream of, and I'll get into that here in a minute. um, when I was a kid, I grew up doing concrete work with my dad, and I went with my dad to work before I ever went to school. And I went to school at 6 years old. That's when I started school, was at 6 years old. I went to with my dad to work before I went to school, because that's just who my dad was. He was a super, super, super hard worker. I mean, he worked from sunup until 2 hours, 3 hours after sundown. And I told myself that I'm not going to do concrete work because that's too hard work. It's backbreaking, etc. I'm not going to be a concrete guy. So then I went into construction when I turned 18. I ran away from home at 17 with $10 in my pocket and a bag of clothes, because I wanted to get away from all my problems at home, from all the hard work, all the when you're a teenager, you know everything. So, and then I got into construction at 18 years old, and then at 20 years old, 20 years old, I started my own business. And that's what I still do today, is I have my own business.
So, who's been kind of your inspirational force? Who has been that person in your life that taught you about hard work and getting to where you're at today?
Uh, Growing up, I went with my dad to work being a concrete guy, and then I later got started my own business at 20 years old. And but going back to your question, what I dreamed of when I was a kid, I dreamed of when I was a teenager and in my early 20s actually that I would like to fly a helicopter. Um, and but being in the religious situation that I was in, that was not allowed in the religion that I grew up in, the conservative church that I would belong to. So I put that on the back burner and said I'll probably never be able to do that because I'm in this, I was Amish. I grew up Amish, and they didn't allow us to fly. That was prohibited. So I put that on the back burner and I said I'll never be able to do that. But since then I left the Amish church 15 years ago and I am currently doing training to fly a helicopter, and I want to get my own planning to have my own helicopter here in the next few years. It's something that I've always been passionate about. I just thought it's the coolest thing, that you can take these machines, if you will, with this big rotor blade up top and land anywhere per se. You don't need a runway.
So, who's been that inspiration that's allowed you to dream and to become who you are today?
You know, honestly don't really know where the inspiration came from, but I've always dreamed big. I've always had big goals, big dreams, an overdose of determination. I guess the determination part, the determined part of me would have probably came from my mom's side of the family. My mom was super determined. Her side of the family is just super determined. When they put their mind to something, they're very hard to sway. But the big dreaming, I honestly don't know who would have really instilled that in me. I just growing up, I was very how would I say, not I wasn't suppressed. I was just very uh, in a religious upbringing, you might say, and I got tired of it. I got sick and tired of it, and I told myself I'm going to do bigger things someday. Someday, I'm going to do bigger things than being under this religious upbringing. I guess is the best way I can describe it, and sometimes my big dreams get me in trouble. They have gotten me in trouble in the past because I found myself $1 million in debt, in bad debt, like bad debt, $1 million in debt in 2006, 2007, somewhere in that 2007 or 2008, somewhere in that area. I found myself almost $1 million in debt, and I went farther into debt a couple years after that to try to work myself out of debt. I tried to borrow myself out of debt, and this was already when I was 7 years into business on my own in my own construction business. And my big dreams just, I didn't have money management. I never had any financial skills, nothing. My dad never had any money. He worked hard and he was a good person. My dad was a great man and still is today. But he never had a lot of good money management. He made a lot of money and he worked hard, but he never had money.
So, if you could meet one person alive on the planet right now that you find inspirational, that does it the right way, who would you love to meet and talk to?
That's a great question.
Yeah.
I've asked myself that already. Actually, I have, and I haven't came up with a complete answer. But I think probably Jeff Bezos. I'd like to talk to him. he's inspired me on what little I know on how he started Amazon and how he worked his way up. Um, Probably, yeah, probably Jeff Bezos or uh, someone that I never met, but I know of him, is a guy that owns a helicopter training school in Idaho. I don't know him. I just know of him. I know some of his family. He has multiple owns multiple helicopters, and he has a school, a training school. He teaches um, people to fly helicopters because helicopters are like buying a house, and if you own multiple helicopters, you're doing something correct. I mean, they're very expensive machines. They are just stupid expensive machines.
Absolutely. So, what is it that gives you all this energy every day to wake up, to do the work that you do, to change lives, to have a successful business, to take care of your soul and your family? What's that energy every day for you to do it at a high level?
That's a great. It's funny that you asked that because it the the way I keep my level of desire up is I consistently remind myself of where I came from. I consistently remind myself that where I came from, and I remind myself that I don't ever want to get anywhere close to where I was in 2007, 2008, or even back in 1997 when I was 17 years old and miserable. I remind myself of those landmarks in my life when I was $1 million in debt, didn't have any money, had a broken marriage, had an affair on my wife during that time as well. Also, I had been married for 8 years when I found myself $1 million in debt. I was a broke joke in every area of life, if you will. So I remind myself of where I was then and where I am now, and that inspires me to continue to push to raise up other individuals that are struggling, to not to impress them on what I've done, but to impress upon them of what's possible. Because a lot of people don't dream big because they have settled because of their upbringing or their, how would I say, their limited thinking, their limited mindset. I had a limited mindset, and I still do to a degree. It tries to come back. My limited mindset tries to come back every freaking day. And you must, for myself, I must remind myself all the time, let go of your limited mindset and dream bigger because it is possible. And sometimes dreaming bigger is literally just maintaining where you're at for a while. Sometimes you don't need to go higher because sometimes more is not better. Sometimes you just need to maintain where you're at. If you're totally happy where you're at and you got a good life, and you don't really necessarily want to go higher in any area of your life, and you're healthy, maintain your health, maintain your wealth, and just, sometimes that's dreaming bigger, is just maintain what you built.
For sure. So, of everything that you've done and overcome and achieved and accomplished, what are you ultimately the proudest of, the happiest about?
Wow. That's that's a crazy question. I mean, I wrote a book here a while back, a warrior's path to freedom is what the name of the book is. It's a men's workbook, and in there I have a short clip of some of my achievements and the things I've overcame in life. And then the main part of the book is it asks you deep questions to go within yourself and ask yourself these questions, and then journal the answers. I'm pretty. I would say I'm proud of that I was able to put that book together and make society a better place. Not that I'm necessarily proud of, like, the thing that I really wanted to do with that book is hopefully men will get a hold of that book that are searching for a better life, and they read that book and they apply it, because reading it is worthless if you don't apply it. When we know that. But I really have a passion to help other men know that they're not alone on this planet with their struggles. Something else that I'm proud of is that I was able to pay off that $1,000,000 in debt and become a millionaire today, to the positive, and without filing bankruptcy. Like, I was told to file bankruptcy in 2008. I was told that there's no other way out. I don't have another option. And basically, I gave the world the middle finger and the guy that told me that, and I said, watch me. I don't need to file bankruptcy because there is a way. And there was a way. I figured it out, um, and got on the other side of it. And I saved my marriage during that whole mess as well. After my affair, etc., I was able to save my marriage by the grace of God. So yeah.
I love it. So, if anybody wants to pick up your book, they want consulting, coaching, any of the wonderful work that you're doing, where's the best place for them to go?
They can get on YouTube. They can find me on YouTube, or they can find me on Instagram. They can connect with me on Instagram under my name, Glenn Beechy, GLENNBEECHY. My YouTube channel is just under my name, and my Instagram, or they can find me on Facebook as well. So yeah.
Perfect. Yeah, I will put all of those links in the show notes. Glenn, I'm glad we got this to work out. What a wonderful story. Thank you for putting your story out there. Thank you for taking a minute out, and best of luck with everything.
Hey, thank you. Maybe we'll connect again.
Thanks for tuning in to another famous interview with Joe Dimino, where we cover the world of art, literature, business, spirituality, music, and more from around the globe. Our esteemed theme music was composed and produced by the great E.E. Pointer of Kansas City's River Cow Orchestra. If you want to hear more interviews, visit the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino channel on YouTube. You can also find us on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.